Ladies and gentlemen, let us take a moment to shift our minds from the noise of the ordinary and look towards something extraordinary, something most overlooked, something as simple as a bibliography. Yes, I said bibliography. Most see it as a dry list of names and titles, a mere formality, but I see something else. I see a blueprint, a gold mine, a testament that you, yes, you, have taken the time to study, to think, to grow. A bibliography is not just what you've read. It is who you've become because of what you've read. It is the bridge between your ignorance and your enlightenment, between mediocrity and mastery. The greatest minds, those who changed the world, disrupted industries, inspired generations, they didn't wake up geniuses. They consumed knowledge. They learned from those who came before them. They made notes. They studied references. They connected the dots. And when they put their name to a work, a plan, a dream, their bibliography stood as proof. I have done the work. When you create your own bibliography, you don't just collect books. You collect mentors. Every author becomes a voice in your boardroom. Every page you document is a seed planted in your future. You want success? Then document your journey. Show the world, and more importantly, show yourself, that your ideas are rooted in wisdom, that your ambition is guided by study, and that your voice is strengthened by the voices of those who blazed the trail before you. A bibliography is the silent partner in your progress. It's your receipt of effort, your declaration of seriousness. It tells the world, I am not guessing, I am growing. So as you pursue your goals, never forget to read deeply, study widely, and cite proudly. Because in those pages, between those lines, lies the power to build a future bigger than you ever imagined. You want power, start with knowledge. You want knowledge, honor your sources. That is the amazing power of a bibliography. A bibliography is not just a list, it's a ladder to greatness. On the surface, it might look like a mere collection of books, articles, and references. But for those who understand the deeper nature of progress, it's much more. It's the proof that you've done the work, that you've sought out knowledge, and that you've respected the process of learning. In a world where people chase shortcuts and try to appear intelligent without putting in the effort, a well-built bibliography is a quiet declaration that you've chosen the long road, the real road, to success. Think about it. Every name in that list is a mind you've consulted. Every title is a lesson you've absorbed. Every publication is a building block you've used to construct your understanding. And together they form a ladder, step by step, toward clarity, confidence, and expertise. Most people fear the unknown because they've never taken the time to study it. But those who invest time in research, those who fill their bibliographies with wisdom from others, no longer walk in darkness. They walk in the light of borrowed experience. That's the real value. When you commit to building a bibliography, you are making a bold statement. I am not alone in this journey. I am walking with those who came before me. I am thinking with the minds of many, not just my own. And that mindset changes everything. It removes arrogance, it kills ignorance, and it replaces both with insight and humility. The truth is, no great achievement in history has ever been made without learning from others. Even the most revolutionary thinkers started by studying the systems they eventually broke. The bibliography is the trail they leave behind, the roadmap that shows how they got there. And when you take that same approach in your life, whether you're writing, researching, creating, or even just trying to understand the world around you, your bibliography becomes your advantage. It gives weight to your voice, it gives credibility to your thoughts, and it gives you the clarity to make better decisions. So many people today consume information passively. They scroll, they skim, they half listen. But to read with intent, to study with purpose, and to record your sources, that is an act of discipline. It's what separates the seekers from the pretenders. The bibliography becomes a record of your intellectual history. And when you look back at it, you'll see your growth. You'll remember the days when a certain book opened your eyes or a certain article changed your opinion. You'll see the pattern of your development. Not random, not accidental, but deliberate and designed. The reason this matters so much is because we live in a world where knowledge is cheap, but understanding is rare. Everyone has access to information, but not everyone knows how to use it. A bibliography forces you to slow down. It forces you to reflect. It reminds you that information isn't enough. It's the application of that information that creates power. And if you want to rise, truly rise, in whatever field you choose, then you must build your ladder. You must collect your mentors through their books, gather your guidance through their writings, and step upward, one referenced work at a time. That is the path of the serious learner. That is the path of the true achiever. A bibliography is not just a requirement of research. It is the foundation of transformation. It's not just a list, it's your ladder. Use it wisely, climb it daily, and it will take you places shortcuts never will. Behind every successful mind is a trail of studied masters. Success does not occur in a vacuum. It is not a product of raw talent alone, nor is it a matter of luck. It is the result of deliberate learning, persistent curiosity, and the humble acknowledgement that wisdom does not begin with us. Every accomplished thinker, innovator, or leader you admire today has followed a path paved by the ideas, principles, and sacrifices of those who came before them. That's the hidden truth. Success may look like a one-man show on the surface, but dig deeper, and you'll always find a library of influence, mentors, books, speeches, experiences, and legacies that shape the person behind the spotlight. We live in an age that glorifies independence and originality, but the most powerful minds know that true originality is built on foundation. Before someone becomes a leader of thought, they must first become a student of thought. The names in the margins of their notes, the quotes in the pages they underlined, the philosophies they debated with themselves at midnight, these all become part of the mental structure from which they now speak with authority. It's not imitation, it's integration. The greats don't copy. They consume, process, evolve, and then create from the core of their understanding. When you study the masters of any discipline, science, philosophy, business, literature, you are not just reading old ideas. You are tapping into the thoughts of individuals who dedicated their lives to solving problems, questioning assumptions, and pushing the limits of what was known. Their words are not just historical references, they are intellectual tools waiting to be sharpened and applied. The more you study them, the more refined your own thinking becomes. Your mental reflexes get quicker, your insights deeper, your clarity stronger. You begin to see what others miss, not because you're more talented, but because you're better trained. There's no shame in standing on the shoulders of giants. In fact, it's the only honest way to reach new heights. Every insight you gather from a studied master becomes part of your arsenal. You absorb their triumphs and their failures, their wisdom and their warnings. You learn what took them decades in a fraction of the time, and you add your own layer to it. That's how progress happens, not by abandoning the past, but by building on it. It's easy to get distracted by quick hacks and trending ideas, but lasting success is never built on unstable ground. The mind becomes strong by exposure to strong ideas, and strong ideas don't float on the surface. They're buried in books, essays, journals, and deep conversations. You have to go looking for them. You have to be willing to do the work of discovery. And when you do, when you begin to compile a personal treasury of studied masters, something amazing happens. Your voice gets clearer, your decisions get sharper, and your confidence becomes unshakable. Not because you know everything, but because you've learned from those who've walked the path. So if you truly want to grow, if you want your mind to become a powerful force in your field or your life, start studying the greats. Trace the trail they left behind. Follow their footprints not to repeat them, but to continue them. Because behind every successful mind is not just ambition. It's preparation, reflection, and a deep well of learned wisdom. Would you like me to expand the third keynote next? You said. Tough 3. All that you desire. And British to American English. ChatGPT said, certainly. Here's the expanded version of the third keynote. Books referenced are minds borrowed. Greatness borrowed is greatness earned. Crafted in a motivational and educational tone, without headings, and in American English books referenced are minds borrowed. Greatness borrowed is greatness earned. At first, the idea of borrowing might sound like something lesser, something dependent, even unoriginal. But in the realm of intellect and achievement, borrowing is one of the highest forms of wisdom. When you reference a book, you're not just listing a title, you're inviting a powerful mind to walk beside you. You are reaching across time to ask a question, to gain insight, to hear a story, to challenge a belief. You are borrowing someone's mind for a moment so that your own can grow stronger, wiser, and more capable. And that is not weakness, that is strategy. No great builder constructs without tools, and no great thinker evolves without input. Every time you pull knowledge from a book and cite it, you are saying, I've gone deeper. I've taken the time to consult brilliance before forming my own opinion. That's a sign of strength, not dependence. It's a sign that your mind is in motion, that your ego doesn't block your progress, and that you respect the discipline it takes to become excellent. When you borrow a mind through a book, you are temporarily stepping inside the perspective of someone who likely spent years crafting an idea, testing it, refining it, and sharing it. You get to absorb that journey in a few hours. That is a priceless advantage. Far too many people believe they need to have all the answers themselves to prove they are smart or capable. But real greatness is not about showing off what you know. It's about knowing where to look when you don't. The person who can humbly borrow knowledge, use it correctly, and give credit where it's due will always outpace the one who tries to appear self-made. You don't lose anything by borrowing brilliance. You multiply your own capacity. You stretch your mind beyond its limits. You expand your toolbox of thought. And over time, that borrowed greatness becomes your earned greatness. Because you applied it. You built something with it. You created new ideas from it. That's the difference between mere information and true transformation. Referencing books is not just an academic ritual. It's a mental ritual. It tells your brain, I value truth. I seek clarity. I honor the process. And in doing that, you condition your mind to be more alert, more critical, more precise. The habit of borrowing minds through books leads you to think in more structured ways. You start to ask better questions. You notice patterns others miss. You make connections that appear like genius to others, but to you, it's simply the reward of well-documented learning. Greatness isn't always created from scratch. In fact, it rarely is. Greatness is forged through observation, adaptation, and thoughtful evolution. You borrow the foundation, and then you build the next floor. That's how human progress has always worked. That's how it should work. So, never feel the need to hide your references. Instead, showcase them with pride. Let the world see the minds that have shaped you, the books that have fueled you, and the ideas that have challenged you. Because every borrowed thought you refine and apply becomes part of your story, and every piece of greatness you gather becomes part of your character. You are not weaker for standing on the shoulders of others. You are wiser for choosing to climb. When you borrow the minds of the great through their books and use their wisdom with intention, that borrowed greatness doesn't just sit on your shelf. It shows up in your life, in your results, and in the legacy you're building. A bibliography is not a list, it's a ladder. On the surface, it may appear like a mere collection of titles, names, dates, and citations. But for those who understand its true value, a bibliography is something far more powerful. It is a structured roadmap to growth, a series of steps leading upward, guiding the reader toward a higher level of understanding, insight, and mastery. When you see a bibliography at the end of a great book, report, thesis, or article, you're not looking at a dry academic requirement. You're staring at the author's intellectual DNA. You're seeing the thoughts that shape their thoughts. You're seeing the exact ladder they climbed to build the very ideas you're now absorbing. Most people overlook this. They treat bibliographies as an afterthought, or worse, ignore them altogether. But this is a mistake made by those who don't understand how greatness is really built. No skyscraper is erected without scaffolding. No masterpiece is painted without sketches. No powerful mind is formed in isolation. The bibliography is that scaffolding, that sketch. It is the outline of the journey that made the final work possible. If you are wise, you don't just read the main body of work. You explore the bibliography to trace the steps, to understand what influenced the creator, to see what challenges they confronted in their research, and what giants they leaned on for support. Each entry in a bibliography is an invitation. It's the author saying, "This helped me. Maybe it will help you." And if you follow that invitation, you begin climbing your own ladder, one rung at a time. The books, essays, studies, and thinkers listed are not just background noise. They're potential mentors. They're the silent guides who form the ideas you're now benefiting from. When you start exploring them one by one, you take hold of the same tools, the same wisdom, the same frameworks of thought that once empowered someone else to create something meaningful. Let's take this deeper. Imagine every book you read as a step on a ladder. Each step elevates your view, expands your vision, and strengthens your mind. Now imagine that the bibliography is the architect's blueprint for that ladder. It tells you which steps mattered most in their climb. Why wouldn't you want to study that? Why wouldn't you want to climb the same route, especially when it's laid out so clearly? Smart individuals don't just read for entertainment, they read for expansion, and a bibliography provides the fastest path to expanding your thinking in the direction of excellence. Furthermore, by climbing this ladder, you are not merely repeating someone else's journey, you are extending it. You don't have to stop where they stopped. In fact, you're not meant to. You use the bibliography to get to where they ended, and from there, you push forward. That's how innovation happens. That's how you become the next step in someone else's bibliography. It's a chain of mental evolution, a series of ascending minds, each helping the next reach a little higher. In every field, whether science, business, art, leadership, or philosophy, the top performers are the ones who took the time to study those who came before them. The bibliography is the thread that connects generations of thinkers. To ignore it is to isolate yourself from the very stream of wisdom that could carry you forward. To study it is to join that stream, to learn faster, think deeper, and create better. So the next time you see a bibliography, don't just skip past it. See it for what it really is, a ladder, a chance to rise, a clear, structured, intentional path to wisdom. And remember, every rung you climb not only brings you closer to mastery, it brings you closer to becoming a source of wisdom for others. Because one day, someone may study your bibliography too. Every citation is a seed planted in the soil of your credibility. It may seem like a small gesture, adding a name, a title, a date. But in truth, it's a powerful declaration. It says to the world, I didn't build my ideas on air. I built them on a foundation. Just as a farmer knows that each seed carries the potential to feed a village, the wise thinker knows that each citation has the potential to grow a forest of trust, respect, and authority. It's not just about proving where your information came from. It's about showing how seriously you take the responsibility of speaking truth, of building arguments that last, and of engaging in a legacy of knowledge that stretches far beyond yourself. Credibility is not given freely. It is earned through consistency, integrity, and the discipline of doing the work others skip. Citations are one of those disciplined acts. When you cite your sources, you demonstrate that you've done more than guess, more than assume, more than Google casually. You've taken the time to trace an idea to its root. You've sifted through information to find what's solid. You've respected the reader or the listener enough to say, here's how I know what I know. And in a world overflowing with noise, that kind of clarity is magnetic. People trust those who ground their words. They follow those who back their claims. They listen to those who plant seeds of truth, not opinions floating in the wind. Every citation becomes part of a larger ecosystem. As your thoughts take root, others may reference you, and the cycle continues, truth supporting truth, idea fueling idea. That's how entire disciplines evolve. That's how progress becomes possible. A citation is not just a backward glance to someone else's work. It's a forward movement in collective understanding. When you contribute to this cycle honestly, you align yourself with a greater force, one that values substance over spectacle, wisdom over noise, accuracy over assumption. Think of the people whose work has changed the world. Scientists, philosophers, leaders, educators, creators. Their impact didn't come from making wild, unsupported claims. It came from their ability to track truth, to show the work, to give credit, and to build on what came before. They planted seeds with every citation, and over time, those seeds grew into entire fields of knowledge, innovation, and influence. You have the same opportunity. You may not see the results overnight, but credibility grows like a tree, slow, steady, and undeniable. Many people today rush to be original, to be first, to be loud, but the ones who last are the ones who are credible. They take the time to get it right, not just get it fast. They cite their sources not to show off, but to show respect. For the truth, for the reader, and for the process of learning itself. When you build your work on a network of trusted sources, you not only stand taller, you make it easier for others to climb beside you. That's leadership. That's legacy. That's how real authority is formed. So when you're tempted to leave a citation out, when you think it's just a formality, remember this: every citation you plant is a signal. It tells your audience that you can be trusted, that your ideas have roots, that you've put in the time to understand, to verify, to learn. And over time, those seeds will grow. They'll grow into respect, into reputation, into influence that doesn't fade with trends. Because credibility, once earned, becomes one of your greatest assets, not just in writing, but in life. Masterminds don't just leave behind their inventions, their books, or their speeches. They leave behind trails. Trails that, if followed closely, can lead you right into the heart of their thinking. And one of the most powerful, yet most overlooked, maps they leave is their bibliography. Every citation, every reference, every footnote is a breadcrumb in the forest of ideas they walk through to arrive at their conclusions. If you truly want to think like the greats, you must go beyond their polished conclusions and study the raw materials they built those conclusions from. That's what a bibliography is. It's not an accessory to the main work. It is the scaffolding. It is the architecture. It is a mirror into the soul of the thinker. Too many people try to emulate success by copying the final result, but they miss the process. They mimic the voice, but not the depth. They quote the outcome, but not the origin. But those who understand the real path to growth know this: to think like a master, you must read what the master read, question what they questioned, and trace the roads they walked in search of truth. The bibliography makes that possible. It hands you the exact materials that shaped a brilliant mind, and dares you to use them to shape your own. This is not just about academic rigor. It's about intellectual transformation. When you study the bibliography of someone who made an impact, you're stepping into their workshop. You see which tools they used. You get to test those tools for yourself. You learn not just what they thought, but how they learned to think that way. You're not stealing their ideas. You're strengthening your mind by engaging with the same sources, measuring your interpretations against theirs, and slowly but surely developing the kind of sharp, clear, original thinking that can move others just as powerfully. Let's be clear, no mastermind becomes great in isolation. They stand on the shoulders of giants. They drink from the wells others dug, but they do something special. They go deeper than the average person is willing to go. They don't just read, they study. They don't just collect quotes, they digest meaning. And the bibliography is your ticket into that very depth. When you follow their trail, you learn discipline, patience, and discernment. You begin to see patterns in how great thinkers analyze problems, synthesize ideas, and arrive at powerful conclusions. What's most inspiring is this: once you follow the trail long enough, you begin to form trails of your own. You begin to connect ideas in a way that hasn't been done before. Your own bibliography begins to grow, not as a collection of random titles, but as a reflection of your intellectual journey. And someday, someone may study your bibliography the way you studied someone else's. They'll look at the thinkers who shaped you. They'll trace the steps you took toward clarity and contribution. And they'll grow because you left behind a path to follow. So don't treat a bibliography like a formality. Treat it like a master key. Behind every entry is a conversation, a challenge, a breakthrough waiting to be revisited. The greatest minds left trails because they knew that the journey matters just as much as the destination. If you want to elevate your thinking, follow those trails. Read deeply, explore thoroughly, and let your mind expand by walking paths carved out by those who reached heights worth climbing.